Hello and welcome to this episode of Sticky Note Marketing. I am your host, Mary Czarnecki, and today I am so excited to welcome our guest expert, Glen Stevens. Glen and I are going to be talking about a really interesting topic because it impacts not just your work and your business, but it also impacts other areas of your life. And that thing that we're going to talk about is mental fitness. So Glen's going to help us understand what is it and how we can become a little bit more mentally fit. So welcome, Glen. Super excited to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you, Mary. This is real fun for me. You and I talked back in October about this maybe happening, and so glad it is happening right now. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And you're an expert in this area. So excited to hear what you have to share with us today. Now, some folks may know you, some may be meeting you for the first time. So, why don't you help our listeners and anyone watching this understand a little bit about what your business is about, who you work with, and maybe how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I work with C-suite leaders, especially emerging C-suite leaders. And what we know about C-suite leaders are there's a lot of pressure. There is a lot of stress, and there's a lot of time pressure as well, and the danger of workaholism or leaving your family in the dust or just over, burning out. And so what I like to do, my expertise is in mental fitness. So using mental fitness to help these key leaders. The great thing about mental fitness, there's three key ROIs or outcomes that people receive when they do the work. And one is peak performance. And that's, I guess, anybody in business wants to perform at that level, but also, in addition, wellness at a personal level and healthier relationships. And lots of times people feel like you have to do one or the other. What I love about mental fitness is it's a both and approach.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so I work with emerging C-suite leaders and small business owners, so like business owners and their teams. That's who I just love leaders, love hanging out with leaders, talking to leaders. I'm a leader and a leader junkie. I love learning. And so that's who I really enjoy working with, especially ambitious leaders, people who want more, but they don't want their wanting more to be something that actually takes them out in the long
Mm,
run. And that can have that they've seen it. I've seen it and I've been close to experiencing it. And so you don't want to go there. So how do I do both? And so that's what I like to talk about and help people with. And the way I got here, so I'm a former pastor.
mhm.
For 23 years, I was a lead pastor in two different churches, one in Minnesota, one in North Dakota. I live in North Dakota now. So if people think I have an accent, it's a North Dakotan accent. And I did that until 4 years ago. And my story's kind of wild. For people who are spiritual, I guess maybe it's not as wild if they're not as spiritual. Like people want to know, why did you stop the one and go the other?
Mhm.
And for me, it happened praying with a couple of other people, and it was not normal. This one of the people I was praying with had a vision and shared it with me. And the long and short of it was, I thought at the end of that little prayer time, it's like, I think I'm supposed to resign and go start a business. There's more to it than all of that in good ways, not bad ways. Like sometimes people think, did he burn out? Did he get fired? Did he get pushed out? It's like none of that. It was a real legit, I think God told me to do this. And so I just had the simple, like, do I say yes or no to God? Well, I was a pastor, so you say yes to God. And that's the right answer. And started this journey of entrepreneurship and building a business 4 years ago. And you and I got to know each other through Business Made Simple.
Mhm.
And I love that. I'm a certified coach with them. And then I was exposed to positive intelligence, which is another way of saying mental fitness. And for me, it was a light bulb moment because I see the two working together hand in hand. And what I found is most people didn't have the mental fitness side of it. So I like bringing the two together. And usually we start with mental fitness work because that is the missing piece. And then through learning how to become mentally fit, they're able to do all of the business strategic work at a higher level.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think you make a really good point, which is that especially for leaders and ambitious leaders and visionary leaders, they they have an idea of what they want to achieve, right? They usually set big goals for themselves.
Yes.
But a lot of times it can feel like, okay, I'm going to have to pay the price of not
Yes.
spending time with my family or burnout or stress or overwhelm, right? The success has to come at a cost or a pretty
Mhm.
significant cost to your health or, the relationships that you have. So tell us a little bit for those people who maybe mental fitness is an entirely new concept. Tell us a little bit about really what it is and then how do people use it when you're working with your clients, when you use it in your own life? What does this really look like?
Yeah, very good. I'm gonna go at it. I'm gonna give you the more science description
Mhm,
and then the real world description.
mhm,
And people when they hear both, it's like, oh, okay, that's what you're talking about. And I will talk about the key components of what you need to do to become mentally fit at a brief level. And then
mhm.
if you want to dig more into any of those, feel free to dig.
Sounds
But
good.
mental fitness is a person's ability or capacity to handle challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset.
Mhm,
And so, how you do that is the work. So, positive intelligence is where my certification is from. It's a company in San Francisco. The founder is a lecturer at Stanford University, and it's a combination of neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, and performance science. So you take the best of those four disciplines, pull them together, and you've got mental fitness. And what literally happens, like our brains are amazing, and we have more agency than we realize of rewiring the neural uh, pathways in our brains. So it really harnesses the power of neuroplasticity to be able to use our brains in their most effective form and to limit when we go to parts of our brains where it's good to be there for 2 seconds to get an alert, but you don't want to stay there because it'll drive you crazy. And too many people stay there and it's driving them crazy. And so how do you but how do you stop doing that? Because, for a guy like me who's 57, I've got a good 50 years practice taking those neural pathways. And they're the natural first ones. Donald Miller from Business Made Simple likes to say your brain has two jobs. You need to survive and then you need to thrive, and survival comes first.
mhm.
And so the part of our brain that helps us survive is the part of the brain that if we stay there too long, we end up self-sabotaging and getting very stressed and worked up. But there's another whole part of the brain that's helpful. So another way to describe mental fitness is just to say there's my brain can either be my best friend or my worst enemy. And mental fitness is learning how to make it your best friend more often and your worst enemy less often.
I love that. And I geek out on the brain science part of it. So, I love talking about it in terms of storytelling and how, as a marketer, even just when you're telling a story, we're setting off receptors and hormones in the
Yes.
listener's brain. So, when people are applying this or when you're working with your clients, what do you find is different about this practice than other things that leaders typically go to relieve stress, like yoga or therapy or
Right.
mindfulness or meditation? How does this differ from some of those other practices?
Yeah. Let me back up one more step and then I'll answer your question. So basically the research has been done, and in a way to try to describe it that's really helpful and user friendly, we say that you have three mental muscles. And of course we've got no muscles in our brain. But it's a great analogy. So if you think of getting physically fit, you are going to take some time to work out different muscle groups to be able to get stronger so you're physically fit. Well, if you work out just these three mental muscles over time, like physical exercise, these mental exercises will help you to become mentally fit and strong. And then you're able, like, I might want to climb a mountain, but I'm only fit enough to hike a hill. So I got to get in better shape. And lots of business leaders and executives want to climb and scale the mountain of success, but their mental fitness is at hill level. So they got to get stronger mentally if they want to be able to climb the mountain. And so I show them how to strengthen those three muscles. The three muscles, I'll do this real quick. Your saboteur interceptor muscle. So when our brain isn't our friend, we self-sabotage. We get in our own way. There's the voice, that inner critic in our head that just drags us down. That's We've got saboteurs, and those will affect us. And if anybody wants to find out, there are only 10 ways human beings self-sabotage. And there is a free assessment that if they come to my website, and I know you're going to list that, they can take a 5-minute assessment and find out what are the top ways I personally self-sabotage.
Mm.
For me, there's two ways. I try to do too much. I have a hyperachiever saboteur, and I try to make people happy too much. I have a pleaser saboteur. And those two are they're all based on strengths, but I take them too far. Anytime you take a strength too far, it becomes a saboteur. And it's a great little tool that people can use. Just 5 minutes, you will learn so much about yourself. And that's the first step in the saboteur interceptor muscles, just self-awareness.
Mm.
We have another muscle we call it the sage muscle. So this is the part of your brain where you do your best work, where you're compassionate and empathetic, where you're curious, where you're creative, where you tie into what really matters, your values and your purpose and your mission, and you tie your activity to that, and then being able to take action on what you really want. That's the sage, we call that your sage muscle. And there's ways you can strengthen that. And then the last one is the self-command muscle. And the self-command muscle is that ability to tell my brain, don't go on a weird trip down there in emotional craziness. Instead, go be curious, or go be empathetic, or go be, very purposeful. So that self-command muscle is really similar to yoga, to mindfulness. Those are actually forms of this self-command muscle. So it's the way you calm your brain down is you focus on a sense for at least 10 seconds. So it could be sight, it could be sound, it could be breath, it could be touch, but the science shows us that just 10 seconds of focus like that will impact your brain. The part of your brain where the saboteurs are calms down, and the part of your brain where you do your best work, your executive function stuff, that lights up. So one of my favorites is I rub two fingertips together, and I just pay attention to what that feels like, and I try to feel the ridges of my fingertips. And what I love about this is, like, yoga or mindfulness, often people benefit from that, but it feels like something you have to do at home
Mm.
or at the gym or at the yoga studio. Um, and in the middle of my busy rush day, and all the benefit I got from my morning yoga session is worn off, it's like, what I wish I had something I could take to work. Well, these little 10-second bursts of mental strength or calmness by just focusing on a sense is huge. So rubbing my fingertips together, I love this one because I can do this at any time. Like I could be doing this right now. You can't see my hand,
Mhm.
but I can do this. I can even be talking to you, but I'm with 20% of my brain, I'm really focusing on that sensation and paying attention to that. It just, if I was nervous, it would calm my brain down. Or what's the farthest away sound I can hear right now? And I just stop to listen. Or I just notice my breath and breathe in and breathe out. And just for 10 seconds, if I can do longer, it's even better. And so here's one way you can use this. I'll talk to an executive. You got a big meeting coming up or a big presentation, or maybe you're anticipating a tense time. Well, maybe you should just go take a walk, or maybe go close your door to your office and close your eyes and set a timer for 2 minutes and just breathe. And tell your brain just to focus on the breath and notice that, when you inhale, your chest cavity expands. When you exhale, it goes down. You can listen to the sound of your breathing. When you inhale, it sounds different than when you exhale. You can pay attention to the temperature of the air as you breathe in, and then the temperature changes as you breathe out. Simple little things like that. Your brain's going to want to wander and think about the meeting, and you just say, the meeting's in 5 minutes. We'll be there. Right now, I just come back, focus. You are setting yourself up to have a better meeting and be better self-regulated. Just doing something simple like that, even 2 minutes. 5 minutes is better, but that's a simple way of making sure you're bringing the best you to whatever you need to do next. So that self-command muscle is a lot like mindfulness. It's a lot like benefits of yoga where you're stretching and you're feeling muscles and you pay attention to how that feels, the tension and then the release. And it is it's really, really like when I lead people through that, they just sort of like calm down and they feel better. So even just for that, just if you want to feel a little better, breathe.
And I like what you highlighted too, which is that, 5 minutes is better, but 2 minutes does have an impact.
Yeah,
You don't need special equipment. You don't necessarily need a special space. There's
right.
ways to tap into this and the benefits of this, even in small moments, small increments.
Yeah, even 10 seconds would make a difference on a functional MRI machine hooked up to your brain,
Oh,
even
wow.
10 seconds. So everybody has 10 seconds, and 10 seconds of mental calm is better than none.
Mhm.
If that's all you've got, take the 10 seconds.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned too, and I'm sure to get that peak performance, we're talking about a
Yes.
little bit more of a practice than just the 10 seconds,
Yeah,
but you have to start somewhere.
yeah.
So
So,
talk a little bit about that.
right.
What does that take?
So what that takes is it takes intentional practice. It's like joining a gym. So a product I have is called the Executives Mind Gym. And in that, I help them install a mental fitness operating system that will strengthen those three mental muscles. And so we start with the self-command muscle. One week, we take a couple weeks on your saboteur interceptor muscle, and then we spend 3 weeks on the sage muscle, getting them strong and reinforcing over time. We have an app that we use, which is like your mental fitness gym in your pocket or on your phone. And it takes about 15 minutes a day of intentional workout, practice of your mental muscles. And so the app guides that process, so people can do it on their own time in their own space. And I just meet with them once a week during like a 7 week period to, guide them through the process. So if you really want to like get a real strong baseline, you can buy the book Positive Intelligence and try to do that on your own, or you can find someone like me who can help you install the mental fitness operating system, and then you've got it and you can use it for the rest of your life. It's the app. People get access to the app when they join for 52 weeks, and you can ask for more time with that at a cost, but that's what I love. I've got the app and I do workouts like every day. When we're done with this, I'll do my third workout today on mental, then try to do one early in the day, another one right after lunch, another one in late afternoon. And that helps keep my brain sort of charged up to do its best work. And the apps are very helpful with that. But you can set your timer on your watch to go off every 3 hours and stop and close your eyes and rub your fingertips together or breathe or go for a walk and notice the colors that you see and just really pay attention to that, or listen to your favorite song and focus on one of the instruments or maybe the background singers instead of the vocalists, and you're doing the same work. And it's really, really a great way to take a break.
Well, it's interesting because I was actually just in a workshop yesterday where someone was, lamenting the fact that now with Zoom meetings and how packed our calendars
Yes.
are with meetings back to back, that sometimes she finds there's these wasted breaks, right? That 10 or 15 minutes
Right.
between meetings where you really can't do work. You can't
Yeah.
get in and actually do a project or create or
Yes.
do something. But that's a really interesting thing because now you could take those wasted moments, do one of these fitness exercises, and actually get more productivity benefits, right? Than
Yes.
actually, spending the 15 minutes saying, oh, well, I can't do anything, so I'll, surf Instagram, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. If you want a real true power break, like your brain will be much more refreshed and ready to do work if you take, yeah, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and focus on one of your senses. Or 5 minutes is a long time, so I might go for a few seconds, and I'm not, I guess sometimes I set my timer, sometimes I wouldn't, but I'll like, okay, I'm going to start with my breath, and now I'm going to move to sound, and then I'm going to rub my fingertips together, or I'm going to grab my phone with the case and like actually feel the bumps and the ridges on this and like pay attention to that. Maybe I just stop and pay attention to the weight of my body in the chair that I'm sitting in and just pay attention to that sensation. So our bodies are connected to our brains. And when we use them both, we are experiencing greater wellness than when we don't. And it's so tempting to want to just be in our heads and forget we got bodies.
mm,
And so this helps me as a achiever kind of person to stop and listen to my body because it's always telling me something. And if I'm stressed or have emotional distress, now that is the key, that one of my saboteurs is messing with me. And so I can stop and go, okay, what's happening here? That's what's happening. I'm believing this lie in my head that if I don't get this project done by this time, then my boss is going to fire me and my kids are going to have to move into, one room apartment. And, it just sort of goes, our brain goes crazy places. And it's like, oh, those are all lies based on fear. And our brains weren't designed to be run on fear and lies. We do much better with love and truth.
I love that. Yeah. And so just to kind of paint the picture for people
Yeah.
of going from that, because I like how you said that, we function so much better in that space of love and truth. So when
Yes.
you think about, the leaders you work with the clients that you support and help with this, give us a picture of the before and the after. So when people realize that, okay, this is something I'm needing to work on, right? They're
Yeah.
what we call, right, problem aware and solution aware. So
Yeah.
what does that before look like? And then what are you seeing that after look like? What
Yeah.
really happens for people?
This is my favorite part to talk about, the transformation. Like people who take this seriously and actually, it's like buying a gym membership, right? And you get to choose whether you go to the gym or not. So the people who go to the gym and do the work, they'll go afterwards like, oh, I got so much more energy, or I lost this much weight, or I've gained this much muscle mass. Well, the way that works with mental fitness, I'll give you some examples. I was talking to somebody today. They mentally were struggling in their relationship with their spouse. And they've done the hard work of mentally figuring out what their saboteurs were, how their saboteurs were coming out when they were having issues with their spouse. They did the work to realize how to catch their saboteurs, and then instead go to the sage part of the brain where they bring either curiosity or empathy to their spouse. And so they were able to slow down and really listen and look for points of agreement instead of defensiveness. And this person literally said, I wrote it down because it was so good. He said, I wish this version of me could go back 2 years and be with my wife 2 years ago. Because if this version of me had been back there then and I'd have treated her like I can now, I think we would have, the last 2 years would have been way different.
Mm.
So that's one example. Another example is I worked with a woman who was a business owner by day, a flight nurse by weekend, and a mom of a preschooler every day with a husband who was a police officer and did nights. So crazy kind of life, really busy, and anxiety is something she's suffered with her whole life. And she was just like, very, very anxious and very emotionally getting down. And when business wasn't going well, she would beat herself up. She had a pleaser saboteur. I talked about that earlier. And she was tempted. She would always cheat herself to try to make other people happy. And
Mm.
so she'd get run down and kind of burnt out with all that. Well, going through all this, she learned what she was doing, and she learned what she needed to do, like the PQ reps and the mental, the sounds, sense, touch. She really likes touch, and breath were her favorites, and also like tensing and releasing muscles. Those were her favorites. And she said, I was having coffee with her, and she goes, this has so, she's crying. So this has so changed my life. My husband and I have had our best conversations that we've ever had in our 6 years we've known each other. And I've learned how to, not be defensive and not judge him and be empathetic towards him instead. And my daughter is a preschooler and she would just get on my nerves sometimes. And I've learned how to not let that happen and instead meet her where she's at. And she's even taught her daughter how to do like simple mental fitness stuff that helps her calm down and helps her when she's having trouble falling asleep. And she lost one of her biggest clients in her business. And she said, I remember I got a text from her. She goes, before this would have crushed me. I would have been just totally dejected. But one of the things we teach is every outcome, every experience we have can be turned into a gift and an opportunity. So when you reframe it in your brain, when you start looking for the opportunity, no matter what happened, you go to that part of your brain where your brain's your friend. And she said, I just got done with a 1 hour, like strategy meeting, visioning meeting on my business at a coffee shop after I just found out my worst, like my biggest client was not going to use me anymore. And I just had the best strategy session I've ever had on my business. So these tools helped her manage bad news or manage relational stresses and overcome them and actually bring a better self to those. And yeah, and so anyway, those are some examples of how this impacts real people's lives.
Oh, I really appreciate you sharing those stories because, yeah, especially with the woman you were just talking about, it it's not just a business thing, right? It's not just
Right.
a productivity thing, but it is really the whole person. You're helping the relationships, you're helping, their life. Like you're saying, it changed her life.
Yeah. And for me personally, here's you and I are both speakers. And my hyperachiever saboteur, I realized this about 3 months ago. I had given a talk to a bunch of financial advisors. It was the best talk I'd ever given on resilience and mental fitness ever. And when I was done, in my brain, here's that saboteur started saying, Glenn, if you had worked harder and done a little more research and prep, that would have been better. And I caught it for the first time in my life. I've done a lot of public speaking as a pastor. And I would always, when I was done, it's like, oh, I would have been better if this, it would have been better if that, it would have been. And I was living in the gap of what could have been and what is. And it's like, that's all saboteur driven. It was stealing my joy. Like I
Mm.
just given the best talk I'd ever given. And I was able to catch it and really celebrate. I have like celebrating's been hard for me. And now I'm able to celebrate success or even progress,
Mhm.
where in the past it was like progress didn't count because you always could have done more. It always could have been better. And it dawned on me, even the best speaker in the world who gave their best talk ever that they ever gave could have been better. So stop going there in your brain and instead enjoy giving a great talk, enjoy bringing value to people, and then enjoy that just happened. And that's a much better place for me to live than could have been better, should have worked more, could have like that self-critical stuff.
And I'm sure there are people listening to this who are like, yep, that's what I do. Relive those
Yeah.
moments. Oh, I should have said this. I should have done that. Right.
Right.
So
And
I'm sure there are folks that can resonate with that.
yeah, there is such a thing as toxic positivity who they ignore those things. So I can still acknowledge, yeah, it could have been better, but it's now framed in a explore, discovery, curiosity mode where I'm not bringing judgment. I'm just curious
Mhm.
so I can learn, so I can get better. And I'm finding the facts so I can improve, which is fun, rather than finding the facts so I can beat myself up because I should have done better. It's completely different. And when you live one way, it drains your energy and it gets you, yeah, just it doesn't help you really. Whereas when you live the other way, you have to, nothing works perfect. So you have to be able to go, this is what went wrong, and this is what we can learn from it. So that's still using, that's not saboteur, that's sage. Anyway, I will let you talk for a second.
No, no, this is great. I'm taking mental and physical notes. So hopefully all of you guys listening and watching have your sticky notes out. So, but well, Gren, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing these gold nuggets, these tips with us. I love
Hmm.
the fact that you highlighted, yes, there can be a more long-term, more intentional practice, but for people listening, they can apply something very simply right away, right? Taking that,
Yes.
like you even said, just the 10 seconds, the 2 minutes, really getting yourself out of those that thought trap, those saboteurs that are,
Yes.
sabotaging your ability to be your best self, enjoy the moment. So I just want to say thank you for that. Any parting thoughts that you have for the listeners today?
Yeah. Well, I would say yes. The what you just said. So you can start small
Mhm.
right now, right? Like when you get done listening to this, you could put this into practice. And it's like compound interest. There's a cumulative effect. So if you do set your timer to go off every 3 hours each day and you stop, and even if all you have is 10 seconds, you do 10 seconds, but maybe this day you got 2 minutes or whatever. Over time, you are literally, when you do that, you are training your brain to be able to use the neural pathways you want to use and starve the neural pathways that aren't helping you, except for to alert you to a big problem quickly. And so I would say even if you can do just a little bit every day over time, just like working out or just like compound interest, it accumulates and the flywheel, I love Jim Collins' Good to Great. You push the flywheel and you push the flywheel and you push the flywheel. And then one day you notice the flywheel goes without you even pushing it.
Mm.
And so a little bit every day. And then if they want, like, oh, I need more than just a little bit every day. I'd love to talk to see if I could help them. Like they see this as something they really need to work on or pay attention to. I'd be thrilled to have a chance to talk to somebody about that.
Fantastic. Definitely. So for all of you guys watching and listening, we're definitely going to include Glenn's website and contact information. So if something sparked and you're looking to take this seriously, to really think about how you can improve your relationships, your work, your performance, using something that is very proven, very actionable, we'll definitely be including the contact information. Highly encourage you to reach out, get in touch with Glenn. He's got so much wisdom to share. So thank you, Glenn, for being our guest today, for being our guest expert and sharing. Really appreciated having you here and you spending time with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Mary. You made it very easy and very fun.
Thanks so much. Thanks
Yeah.
to all of you guys listening for this episode of Sticky Note Marketing.
Uh,
We'll see you on the next episode with our next guest expert. See you then.